Welcome to the Explainer. I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine a small, totally ordinary village right near the border of Rajasthan. It's called Bhairavpur. But if you were to actually walk down its dusty streets, you wouldn't just find everyday folks going about their business. You'd find people whose faces are literally etched with pure, suffocating terror. This was a community completely paralyzed, living under the shadow of this relentless, unseen force that only came out when the sun went down, every single night. So let's dive into the anatomy of this folklore thriller, because we're going to break down the timeline, the psychology, and the genuinely terrifying truth behind what was really hunting the people of Bhairavpur. Okay, let's dive right into this. Okay, I will come tomorrow. It sounds simple, right? But this one little sentence is the absolute core of our explainer today, because it totally shatters everything we think we know about your typical mindless ghost. We are not dealing with some confused, wandering spirit here. Actually, scratch that. We're dealing with an entity that is shockingly literal and terrifyingly literate. It can read, it can reason, and it is actively playing this deeply twisted psychological game with its victims. And the stakes of this game? Incredibly high. 5. That is the exact number of people who vanished. Just poof, gone, without a single trace from this tiny village in the span of only 2 months. Just try to imagine that sheer dread for a second. Every night, the sun sets, and someone in Bhairavpur is just sitting in their house, basically waiting for their turn to die. The fear was absolutely off the charts, and it all boiled over into an emergency gathering at the local panchayat, the village council. At that meeting, the panic just completely spilled over. People were frantic. Eyewitness accounts were flying around, and they painted this horrifying picture. The village head, the sarpanch, is listening as people describe this monster, a figure with its feet turned completely backwards, excessively long hair just dragging across the dirt as it walked. One guy even swore that the night before, he heard the gut-wrenching sound of a woman crying right outside his front door. And he knew for a fact that if he had opened it, well, he wouldn't be sitting in that meeting right now. So what do you do when locked doors just aren't cutting it? You look to the past, right? The village priest, this guy named Haridas, suddenly remembers this old tale from his grandfather. It's this fascinating, ancient defense trick. He tells everyone in the village to grab some paint and write, "Oh witch, come tomorrow," in huge letters on every single door. The logic here is actually pretty brilliant. It's designed to trick the spirit. The idea is the entity reads it, agrees to wait until the next day, and then leaves. It essentially traps the ghost in an endless loop of coming back tomorrow. It was a desperate move, but man, they painted those words on every door that very night. Now, the immediate aftermath of this little trick, incredibly deceptive. On night 1, the text goes up. On nights 2 and 3, complete silence. The crying stops, no dragging hair, nothing. The villagers actually started celebrating. They felt this false sense of safety, genuinely thinking, wow, we actually outsmarted this thing. But then we hit night 4, and that relief totally shattered. A villager named Mohan jolts awake in the dead of night. Why? Because he hears heavy, deliberate footsteps right outside his house. The entity had finally caught on. Mohan peeks through his window, and his blood just runs cold, literally freezing. Standing right there in front of his door is this unnaturally tall woman wrapped in a white sari, glaring with these piercing red eyes. But she doesn't just attack. Mohan watches in absolute horror as she leans in and reads the clever little trick they painted on the door. And then she smiles. She raises this long, skeletal finger, scratches her reply directly into the wood, and just melts into the dark. The next morning, Mohan steps outside and finds her exact words gouged into his door. "Okay, I will come tomorrow." This monster knew exactly what they were trying to do. At this point, the panic is uncontrollable. The witch can read, she knows they're playing her. And things escalate so fast. In the middle of the night, this horrifying scream echoes from the center of the village. It's so loud it wakes up the entire town. Everyone rushes over to where the sound came from, the home of Bika, the village blacksmith. But he's gone, missing, and left on his door is this chilling, totally mocking message: "I had come." The entity was actively playing a psychological game with them now, basically saying, no one is safe, and your little tricks aren't going to save you. So it was time to go on the offensive. A small group of the village leaders, Ganpat the sarpanch, Haridas the priest, Ramlal and Mohan, they all huddle up at the temple. They realize this thing is watching them, learning their every move. This wasn't some random wandering spirit. And then Haridas, who's been sitting there deep in thought, makes the connection. He points out a very specific, notoriously dark location just outside of town. the giant banyan tree. This wasn't just any old tree, guys. This spot had a very dark, deeply buried history. The four men decide to head out to the edge of the village in the dead of night. As they get closer to this massive, sprawling banyan tree, the temperature just plummets. Instantly freezing. The air gets thick and icy. Then, suddenly, Mohan looks down. Scraped into the dirt right at their feet, as if drawn by some invisible, mocking hand, are these exact words. "Are you looking for me?" A chilling whisper kind of just hangs in the air for a second, before this terrifying, guttural laugh erupts from the branches right above their heads. The men slowly look up, and what they see is just the stuff of nightmares. Hanging completely upside down from a thick branch is the witch. Her skin is literally rotting and peeling away from her face in these horrifying strips. And when she actually speaks to them, asking if they'd come to kill her, her voice doesn't even sound human. It's this dreadful, echoing mix of a woman and some sort of wild beast. And guys, here is the devastating twist of this entire story. Haridas manages to ask her, why? Why are you killing our people? The witch's eyes just fill with this pure, ancient hatred. She reveals that roughly 50 years ago, right under this exact same tree, the ancestors of these very villagers dragged an innocent woman out into the dark. Without a single shred of proof, they branded her a witch. They tied her to the trunk, doused her in kerosene, and burned her alive while she begged for mercy. So the monster terrorizing Bhairavpur, it wasn't just some random demon. It was a vengeance entity, created entirely by the village's own historic cruelty. The injustice is just brutal to think about. As this innocent woman burned half a century ago, the mob of villagers literally stood there and laughed at her screams. And as the flames consumed her, she screamed out this final, terrifying curse that was still echoing in the present day. "I will return and destroy your entire lineage." The current generation was paying in blood for the horrific sins of their fathers. The witch screamed at the men. They burned her alive, laughed at her agony, and now they expect her to just forgive them? As she said this, her eyes started glowing a deep blood red. The confrontation instantly goes violent. The witch uses this invisible force to lift Mohan straight into the air, ready to claim her next victim. But Haridas, in a moment of pure desperation, remembers something crucial. A vengeful spirit draws its power from the exact spot of its death. He frantically scans the massive trunk, and boom, he spots it. An old black burn mark right where she was tied up 50 years ago. He yells at Ramallah, who aggressively smashes a flaming torch right into the scarred wood. The witch shrieks in pain. The whole tree is violently shaking, and Haridas pulls out a small vial of ancient Gangajal, holy water, and hurls it directly onto her. The effect was immediate. Totally cataclysmic. The second the holy water makes contact, the entity lets out this final, deafening scream. Her physical form starts to burn and violently fracture, just dissolving into thick black smoke. The massive banyan tree itself literally splits right down the middle, erupting in this blinding flash of light. And then, nothing. Just silence. The freezing wind stops, the smell of rot fades away. For the first time in decades, a genuine sense of peace settles over the clearing. And get this, when the sun rose the next morning, the villagers found that all the desperate text painted on their doors had completely vanished. But the village of Bhairavpur would never, ever truly forget. Because when the men returned to the outskirts the next day to inspect the shattered tree in the daylight, they found one final chilling message left behind. Burned deeply into the broken wood were these exact words. "You betrayed me, I took revenge." Right beneath it was a long, deep scratch mark. It was left there as a permanent physical scar of their ancestors' sins, a dark reminder that the absolute terror they endured was a direct result of their own tragic history. Which brings us to the crucial takeaway of this entire explainer. We started this journey looking for a terrifying creature lurking in the dark, right? But after peeling back all the layers of Bhairavpur's history, we're really left with one final haunting question. When an innocent person is burned by a mob, who is the real monster? The elders of Bhairavpur actually still use this story today as a powerful warning against false accusations. Because the curse of human cruelty, it doesn't just fade away with time, it echoes through generations. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I will leave you to ponder that question until next time.